Welcome back to another election edition of Meet Victoria with Caleb Shaw. Guys, early voting is February 14th through the 25th, and Election Day is March 1st. As you can see, I've got one of the wonderful candidates with me right now, so let's just jump right into this. Sir, if you wouldn't mind, for those who don't know you, please introduce yourself and let us know what race you're running for, if I can talk here.
I'm AJ Louderback, candidate for Texas Congressional District 27.
Good deal. What in the world made you, I know you are very active as a sheriff in our areas and protecting the borders and just being everywhere. That's kind of how I know you. What made you decide to make that transition from sheriff to congressman?
Well, I left a job that I loved, 5 terms with no opponents. I left for representation levels that were very weak here representing the Congressional District in 27. From a law enforcement perspective, the representation at the federal level was absolutely terrible, especially in 2021 when we were hit the hardest. This region were the hardest hit areas in the state of Texas and in the nation on where we live. And the fighting a federal issue, the border is a federal issue, as we understand clearly now, or much more clearly, as we see the state of Texas spending $3 billion with a governor that's doing as much as he can to try to fight a federal issue, and from a state local elected position trying to fight the federal government, which I've been doing for over a dozen years in this lane on border and national security issues. This is very problematic and very, very frustrating for someone like myself who is really ultimately the goal is to protect citizens and protect this country and protect Texas.
Yes, sir. What do you see, underneath that umbrella then, what do you see as the role of a District 27 congressman?
Representation in the district. If you're going to go down to the border when your own district is being impacted at the level it has been, and you're not able to find time to meet with your law enforcement representatives, then those are real key issues here. Those are fundamental requirements of representation here. Being available in the district and taking care of your actual counties in your district is a fundamental responsibility of being elected here. And so these are the foundational aspects of being a congressman here in our district with federal issues. These aren't state issues, these are federal issues that we're dealing with.
Yes, sir, and I think I can probably guess what one of the answers to my next question is going to be, but what are your top priorities if you're elected as a candidate? I'm guessing the border is one. Clearly
the border, which I see as the strongest monster in the basement here in the United States, amongst many problems, clearly that the Biden administration has brought upon this nation. But clearly the fundamental issue of having no border with the vision of an open border policy or a number of policies with the zero enforcement situation that the Biden administration has brought here is the telling thing. That's something that's a key portion of my campaign. I have a long, extensive history of advising our government here in the state of Texas, our government under the Trump administration, still to this day advising on a daily basis information out of Mexico that I'm able to procure simply because I have a reputation as a recognized authority on border issues and border knowledge, as a true frontline fighter on this. And as we define frontline fighter, we're talking about someone who's chased illegals. We're talking about public safety as a frontline fighter, not a politician who's has no background in that at all.
Why do you think it is? I turn on the news and I see our politicians, talking about we have to respect the sovereignty of Ukraine's borders. Borders matter. And, meanwhile, we're opening up our southern border, and it boggles my mind when I watch those politicians talking about how important Ukraine's borders are while they're opening in ours to flooding. And as you mentioned, we see all these illegal bailouts, all these things almost on a weekly basis. What is the answer? You know, I know it's a complex thing, but how do we stop this? You know, because we're watching it it seems like it just gets worse and not better. And how do we stop it?
Complete outrage, the daily critical assessment of the Biden administration policies. It's absurd to try and be concerned over a Russian-Ukraine issue when your own border, by design, and what you intend to do to the American public is there. And this is where I see very little criticism by our federal representatives. So these are some of the issues that I've long had a problem with, as we have waited patiently for some type of a critique, of some type of a organized strategy to bring this information to the forefront of the public on one of the worst problems we've ever had that affect this district.
Yes, sir. Switching topics up on you a little bit, you know, inflation's at the highest rate it's been in 40 years or so. What do you see as the cause of that, and more importantly, what do you see as the solution to that?
Well, it's you know, inflation is of course the greatest hidden tax of all.
Yes, sir.
But unbridled spending by the federal government on money we don't have is probably the first and foremost thing that comes to mind for most Americans. The policies that have decreased our workforce exponentially across the United States, the COVID policies, the vaccine policies, the different things, the accelerated money given to people where they really don't have to work is a fundamental concern for Texans and Americans. The ability to work. I was raised in an atmosphere where, for my parents, that I worked. You know, I was pulling a handle on a squeeze chute, you know, when I was 5 and 6 years old. I have the scars to prove that on my head. But so I worked for everything I had. So the government, I was taught by my parents that the government was not my provider. The dependency, I think Democrats really operate by three major issues. I think they like squalor, I think they like lawlessness, and they love dependency. And those three things really are hallmarks to me of this particular administration that's in office right now.
Yes, sir. Well, kind of along those lines, you know, I'm an outspoken, you know, and I'll lead with the fact that I'm pretty extreme on this. Like, I think taxation is theft. I don't like it. But one of the things that I could hold my nose for would be a consumption tax in exchange of property taxes, because one of the things that it kills me is, one, we never truly own our homes, and secondly, it's a source of revenue that never seems to go down, which I think is why it's held its ground so long. But, you know, property owners pay. And I hear that, oh, well, renters pay too. No, I don't think renters do. I think that's lost profit of a landlord that saved up to get those investment properties that now he's losing. What I like about a consumption tax is everybody pays. You know, if the drug dealer decides to go and buy something, he pays also. But if I decide not to spend my money and stay at home that day, it stays in my pocket. You know, and it's not. And if I can't pay a bill or I choose not to spend, I don't lose my home or something like that. Is a consumption tax, and I realize before I say this next question, that's a huge can of worms, and I understand that there's a lot of levels to it. But as I go through and I talk to people, that seems to be something that people are really a discussion that wants to be had, because I think it puts incentive back on our leadership to, if they make their money off of a consumption tax, then they're incentivized to make sure our businesses are doing well, that our businesses are open. And these COVID shutdowns wouldn't happen because then their money shuts off. And so that's another reason. But on that note, you know, what are your thoughts on a consumption tax? And I just mean general level. You know, we're not trying to define policy here, but just from 30,000 feet, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that most people would see a consumption tax as the beginning, if not directly related to an additional income tax or income state tax here that many states have. If you don't have property taxes, then you have another additional tax in your state. So the concept is valid. I don't know that a consumption tax would bring in the amount of dollars. It may be a combination of both, of an abbreviated property tax plus some additional. We're sitting here at 8% taxes, you know, on our state tax now on consumption of goods. But I also see, and I'll take this a little bit further, in depth, the income tax situation that we have. I was a proponent at one time of flat tax, where each person paid a flat tax. So I think that these concepts all have to be vetted and fleshed out as to what really serves the public in the best way, still allowing government to have the type of money it needs to provide the services. The problem always runs into is what party believes, and take infrastructure for example. Mm-hmm. What's infrastructure to the Democrat Party and what's infrastructure to the Republican Party? And I'll take it down to the local level. What's infrastructure to a city council and what's infrastructure to a commissioner's court? Sometimes you have varying ideas on exactly what is infrastructure. To me, it's how we operate here in the country. It's roads, it's bridges, it's port development, it's the actual true infrastructure, it's communications equipment. How do we actually, fundamentally as Texans, how do we get to where we need to go? How do we accomplish work? Those are the fundamental backbone of this country. So, but when you start including social programs in there as infrastructure or soft infrastructure, I think this is where the real disagreement starts. It would be with me, as I would really fight against what they call or soft policies on infrastructure. To me, those are hard things that we actually use every day. Our roads in many places are in terrible shape. Many of our bridges across the nation are in terrible shape. And how do they get this way? Because we can't determine really what we want as far as infrastructure. I think that's ridiculous.
Yes, sir. And that made me think of something, of the fact that while we have all these internal needs, how we still send millions, if not billions of dollars to other countries around the world that, are marching debt, saying debt to America in the streets and all this. And while part of me, my humanitarian side, wants to give, wants to help others, sure is frustrating when I watch millions and billions of dollars pouring out to other countries that don't like us, and we have people hungry here. We have roads that need fixing here. Do you think as a congressman that that's something that you can start holding to accountability to, is why are we sending all this money to people that don't like us when we have so many needs right here at home?
No, I guarantee you I'll do that. I'll tell you, we fund the United Nations to a level which is unprecedented, and yet the United Nations are the ones who are giving cash cards to illegal immigrants coming over in Mexico as they file through. This is an atrocity that that we need to stop. The funding issues that go along, especially with the administration that's in office now, are just unbelievable on what we're spending money on here and how we're doing it. And I don't understand why we can't have more accountability and more appropriations issues where we can stop some of the funding on Biden projects, especially on the border issues, in order for compliance here. We've got a horrific situation here where Congress is not holding accountable. I remember here 3 months ago when Alejandro Mayorkas promised the American public that on the asylee, the millions that are coming in on the asylee status, we're talking 6,000 a day in Yuma, Arizona right now, this month, that are coming in claiming asylee status. These folks are coming in here, and yet our DHS secretary said if they don't show up for their first court appearance, which is now over 60% are not showing up, that he was going to remove them immediately and deport them back to the country of origin. That hadn't happened at all. So where's the accountability of that? Where's the appropriations on the money that we're spending on that, the transportation in, the money that we're giving to the NGOs and non-governmental organizations? This is hundreds of millions of dollars adding up to $1 billion. It's a phenomenal waste of money that the American public has never approved.
Yes, sir. Well, first, thank you so much for your time. I know these elections are an intrusion into your personal time, that you got to go drive around, talk to people like me and do all this stuff, but we appreciate it, and thank you for willing to toss your hat in the ring.
Thanks for doing it.
Yes, sir. I'm happy to. Guys, one more time. Early voting is February 14th through the 25th. Election day is March 1st. We are powered by ThriveFuel Digital Media, and we will see you at the next one.